All right, test one, section 4, number 14. Here we go. This one's giving us a table, length of fish that were caught in inches. Now, what they're asking you, and again, this happens a lot of times when they give you charts. They're giving you a chart. They're going to explain what's in that chart. Most of that stuff doesn't really matter. What really matters is the question they're asking. So I'm going to kind of jump down to the end here. And they're telling you that there's an outlier of 24 inches. But again, they tell you this at the end. So of the mean, median, and range of the values listed, which will change the most if the 24-inch measurement is removed from the data? So what we're doing is we're taking this value out of the data so it doesn't really count anymore. So this is a little theoretical in a way. First off, the mean, if you understand what the mean is, it's the most occurring number. Well, that's not going to change at all. So as you're going through all your answer choices, we're going to go ahead and rule out A because that's not really going to affect it at all. Which means D, when you look at D, there is going to be a change in your median and your range because, again, this number changes the middle number and the range is affected or found by taking the biggest and the smallest and subtracting them. So it's not going to be D either. So it really comes down to, is your answer going to be B or C? Well, B, even though 24 will change the average, you're still averaging it with a lot of data. So in this case, the range is going to be the one that changes the most, because if you take this number out, you're going to get 16 minus 8. So you're going to get a range of 8. But if you go 24 minus 8, because you're subtracting the biggest number and the smallest number, that's going to give us 16. The range is actually going to double because of that one number. So this is going to change the most, so your answer is going to be C for number 14. Number 15 is a two-parter, 15 and 16. Kind of goes with here's a rough sketch of the chart they're giving you. But this one is giving me, it's a graph above, displays the total cost in dollars for renting a boat for 8 H hours. So we have our H axis right here, so that's H, and then we have our cost, our C axis right here. So this looks like a linear equation, so we're going to probably have some linear equation questions that go along with it, starting with number 15. So what does the C-intercept represent in the graph? So as soon as you see C-intercept, I'm looking at my y-axis, and if you notice here, this y-axis is going to be the initial cost when time is 0. So at time equals 0, my cost, and if I wanted to look at it here, it looks like it's around 5. So my initial cost is going to be $5. And again, anytime they say y-intercept is an initial value, in this case it's initial cost. So in this case, that's the initial. I'm looking for that word initial. That's going to be A. The other one, D, talks about an increase. That's a slope. And then B is the total number. Again, that's you adding everything up. That's not initial. And C is the total number. Again, that's adding everything up. So the only thing that says it's an initial value is going to be A. So that's going to be number 15. Number 16 says, which of the following represents the relationship between H and C? Now what you want to notice here, all they're doing is asking for an equation. You'll see all these are basically written in slope-intercept form. So I want to kind of write this out, y equals mx plus b. And we actually found b, our y-intercept, in the previous problem was going to be 5. So this is going to be 5. Again, we're just doing a linear equation here. And they want to say what we're looking at here is a slope. So right now, if I'm looking at my answer choices, because I know the y-intercept is 5, I know the answer choices for A and D are automatically ruled out. So I just need to see what the slope is. So if you look at this data, you want to pick the first couple points here. And this graph isn't to scale. I'm just looking at the actual picture. You want to get the rise and the run. So if you go and look at the rise, well, this next point looks like it's at 1, 8. Pay attention to the scale on that. So we have 0, 5, and we have 1, 8. So it looks like the rise is going to be 3, and the run's going to be 1. I know it looks like there's a lot of tick marks in here, but if you pay attention to the way the x-axis is labeled, this value is at 1. So I'm going up 3, right 1, so my slope is 3x. I know these variables have changed, but the equation itself has not. So this one is going to be answer choice C. It's going to have the right slope and the right y-intercept. So that's going to be number 16. Number 17, again, I got another rough sketch of what we're working with here. So in 17, they're asking for the value, they're giving you this function, and this is represented as y equals f of x. And what they're saying, for what value of x is the value of f of x at its minimum. So they're asking you when f of x, so when is y at its minimum? Well, that's going to occur right here. That's when y is at its minimum. But the question is for what value of x is that occurring? So this point, if you plotted it, would be -3, -2, if you look at the graph in your book. And they're wanting that, they're not wanting the y value, which is answer choice C. So I'm going through my answer choice. I'm not going to pick C. That's a trap answer. I want the value of x at this point. So I'm looking for this value, the value of x, which is B. So 17 is B. Be careful on that because they're trying to get you to pick the y value when they say minimum. All right, so at this point, we have number 18. Now 18 looks like a system of inequalities. They are telling you on this one, they're giving you two equations. They're saying 0, 0 is a solution to the system. So which of the following relationships between A and B must be true? Now what they've just done at this point is they've told you that, again, the point x comma y, which in this case is 0, 0, is a solution to the system, which means if I want a relationship between A and B, which is what they're looking for, I somehow need to get rid of x and y. Well, they've done that for me because they've given me points to plug in. So I'm going to take my first equation and I'm going to say that 0 is less than negative x, which is -0, so 0 plus A. So my first inequality, I should say, states that A is positive. You see how A is greater than 0 if I read it backwards. So I know A is positive. Next, I'm going to plug into my second equation here. So that's going to say 0 is greater than 0 plus B. So if I come over here and I plug that in, it looks like B is less than 0. So B is negative. So when once I know that, I should be able to kind of figure out what they want. If you look at answer choice A says that A is greater than B. Well, if A is positive and B is negative, obviously A is going to be greater than B. So number 18 is going to be A. That's all you got to do there. Just got to know to plug in that x and that y value to get it in terms of A and B. And then lastly, number 19. Number 19 is a classic system of equations problem. There's two types of equations they're wanting to do here. And the first type is going to be what I call a cost equation. But the cost equation usually has this form, ax plus by equals c. The second equation is one of their favorites, a quantity equation. A quantity equation always has this form, x plus y equals c. These c's aren't necessarily the same, by the way, they're just constants. So the quantity equation, why they like it so much, it's so easy to hide it. All you have to say is how many things you have, and you've got yourself an equation. Whereas to get a cost equation, they usually take 2 or 3 sentences explaining what the different costs are and what the total cost is. So it takes a lot of explaining to get this equation, so students are really focused in on that. But the quantity equation, they just have to give you a quantity. They don't really have to explain much at all. So these are the two equations you're going to see in this problem. So this one, they're spending a lot of time talking about costs. You'll see that a food truck sells salads for $6.50 each. So again, that word each means a rate, so that's going to be one of my costs. So I'm going to go 6.5 S for salads, plus, in this case, the drinks are $2 each, so plus 2D. And that's going to equal, it looks like the total cost for the entire day is $836.50. And I know to jump to that, anything that deals with cost, I know that that is going to go into my cost equation. Now, my quantity equation, all they said, there's in the middle of that sentence where they're talking about how much money they made, the food truck's revenue from selling a total of 209 salads and drinks in one day. That's your quantity equation, that little statement they just made. They just told me that if I took S and D and I added them up, then I'm going to get 209. So those are my two equations. You'll see one's a cost, one's a quantity. Once you have that, you just have to solve this. It says how many salads were sold that day, so my goal is to eliminate D. So in order to eliminate D, I'm looking at these equations. I want to get rid of D. I'm going to use the elimination method, and I'm going to multiply by 2. You can also multiply by a -2 if you'd like. It's really up to you. That depends if later on if you want to add or subtract these equations. So when I multiply by 2, my first equation is still 6.5s plus 2d equals 836.5. And it's 50, but that's fine. My second equation, I get 2s plus 2d. And in this case, that's going to give me 418. 209 times 2. And now I am going to subtract. And again, my goal is to eliminate the d. So when I subtract, those d's are going to cancel. That'll give me 4.5s equals, and you may want your calculator for this, it depends, but that's going to be 418.5. And then divide by 4.5. Again, you can use your calculator in this section, so feel free to do so. Do these calculations, and you're going to get S equals 93. And all we got to do is figure out which answer the choice has 93. That's going to be answer choice B. And there is your answer for number 19.